Hi everyone and good morning. Well, at least it is morning for me here as I'm recording this. And welcome we're already to part 8 of the series of the basic audio tutorials on Eurofly 3. Where today I'm finally going to be talking about how to control and steer the plane in principle. And I'm also obviously going to demonstrate it a bit. So let's choose training right here in the main menu.
Training dialog. Practice flights
And let's do a practice flight with the Cessna C-152 that I have here because I have already finished the training with this plane.
Cessna C-152.
Which is actually the smallest and easiest plane available in Eurofly 3, so it should be perfect for the purposes of this demonstration.
Airport selection dialog.
Now it's asking me to select the airport, so let's do
select an airport combo box, Slovakia, Sireni.
My favorite one is Slovakia, which is also pretty easy because it's flat and level, so hopefully everything should go all right when we fly at this airport.
Europe, Slovakia. Dashboard window.
So we can hear that we're already in the cockpit on the dashboard, and let's get going. But as you can see, if I'm trying to press various keys here now, they don't react. Nothing seems to be doing anything at all. And that's because, like I was saying in the last part, that nothing actually works and we can't start any systems of the plane before we turn on the power supply itself. So let's press Ctrl-Shift-B for battery. And let's also turn on the onboard computer immediately with Ctrl-Shift-K, because without doing that, we would not be able to get any readouts at all of our current course and speed and altitude and so on. Ctrl-Shift-K.
Computer on. Fuel low.
We have fuel low. Let me refuel with Ctrl-E.
Set fuel amount, edit blank.
Let's type in 1,000 liters.
Fuel
press
low.
enter.
1,000. Dashboard window.
Because I haven't flown with this plane yet, I haven't done a practice flight with it yet since I received it after completing the training for it, so it had no fuel actually. I can now check the status of the fuel with the E key on its own.
1,000 L.
It says 1,000, just like I asked. Well, actually, it's only with these small Category 1 planes that you literally pour in the fuel manually. For Category 2 and 3 planes, you have to actually contact the tower and ask them to dispatch the refueler for you, which takes a little bit of time. So we are now at the airport.
0.
Our speed is 0 with the R key. Our course is
west
with the S key. We're facing due west. And let's also check out quickly where we are within the airport with the K and L keys.
50 hangar.
We're in the
550 hangar.
We're in the hangar, but I'll be talking about the airport coordinates in greater detail in the next parts, where I'm going to be talking about how to navigate at the airports. So let's leave it at that for now, but let's open the hangar with Shift O, or we are not going to be able to get anywhere. And since this is a runway-less airport, the simplest possible kind of airport, we can just drive around the airport and try to take off and try to land, and it'll be ideal for me to explain everything in this way, to explain the very basics of steering the plane. Well, so I can immediately start the engine with the page up key now that I've been refueled. Let's also fasten our seatbelt with Ctrl-B, because if we didn't,
seatbelt fastened,
and we started moving, the plane would constantly keep warning us that we need to fasten it. You know, in this tutorial, I will not be contacting the tower and asking for the permission to take off and to land and to enter the runway, etc. Just to keep this sweet and simple. But please keep in mind that it is not good and safe practice at all to be doing this. It is not advised. When you actually fly for yourself, even in training, do always contact the tower first before doing anything important like taking off. But this will be shown again in detail in the second series of tutorials that will be dedicated specifically to how to perform training flights with the individual training planes. Well, before I start moving at all, I must explain how it actually works, because in Eurofly 3 our speed, our altitude, or our actual direction are no longer just direct plane numbers. It is no longer about just pressing a single key on the keyboard and then immediately having the course or the speed or the altitude set to that value, but rather all of these are only the resulting product of how exactly we've set the power of our engines, or how exactly we've set the steering angle of our wheels or wings, or the nose angle. So it is pretty much like it would be with a steering wheel in a car. Just imagine, or in a bicycle or anything, just imagine that if you were trying to steer, you can't just, tap the steering wheel slightly to go to the left or something and then immediately release it. If you want to turn left, if you want to turn, say, 90 degrees to your left at a right angle, you have to keep holding that steering wheel in the desired direction for some time, and you let go of it only once you're actually happy with the direction that you're currently moving in. This is exactly what we do in Eurofly 3. So we set how much we want to turn the wheels by, how much, or how sharply, how steeply the plane should steer. Or obviously, once we're already in the air, it's going to be turning the wings instead of the wheels. But the final course is going to be the result of that. We steer. We change the angle of the wheels or the wings with either the left or right arrow key. But then, when you need to level the plane to keep maintaining that current direction and not to turn any more, you could either, press the right arrow key 10 times, or, which is much faster, you can actually press shift left or shift right together to change the angle by 10-degree increments. Both the wheels and the wings can be turned by up to 50 degrees in either direction. So shift left or shift right 5 times. Or if we were just pressing left and right on their own, it would be the left or right key on its own, but 50 times. The G key always reads out the current angle of the wheels or the wings. And if we need to level the plane quickly, we press G twice quickly in rapid succession, and it's going to level the plane. It's going to keep the wheels and the wings straight. The same principle works for the nose, for changing the nose angle. The down arrow key on its own raises the nose upwards by 1 degree, so that would make us climb, and the up arrow key on its own lowers the nose down by 1 degree, so it would make us it would help us to level the plane if we were climbing previously, or if we were flying level previously, it will help us descend. And again, so that we don't have to press the arrow keys 10 times, we can also press shift down to raise the nose by 10 degrees in one step, in one increment, or shift up to lower it by 10 degrees at once. And again, the T key reads out our current nose angle, and if we need to level quickly, we just press T twice quickly and the plane levels the nose. Also, I forgot to mention that even though you can technically turn the wings by 50 degrees while airborne, it's never safe to do so. If you do, the angle becomes critical. It's the critical wing angle, and we would enter a stall. So it's okay, and it's perfectly safe to be turning the wheels by the whole 50 degrees when on the ground. In fact, for the larger planes, like the really huge ones like the Boeings and the Airbuses, we even have to turn the wheels by 50 degrees a lot of the time in order to be turning at all when moving on the ground at low speeds. But in the air, it's never safe to turn the wings by 50 degrees, and it's usually only 25 degrees at the most in order to avoid a stall. Likewise, we need to be watching the nose angle constantly so that we don't climb or descend too steeply. And the ideal nose angle for takeoff and landing for each plane is again listed in the plane properties that are accessible with Control Enter at any time. As for the speed, we have to modify, we have to set the throttle for the engines. And based on that, the engines will produce their power output, and only that is going to determine the resulting speed. The engine power can be set between 0% and 100%. Imagine that as though you were moving an actual physical joystick in the plane, in the cockpit. The joystick can be moved forward or backwards, and the farther forward you move it, the more power you set. This is the same logic as with the nose, by the way. It is so that the down arrow actually raises the nose, because it's like that in actual planes as well, in actual cockpits. If you did have a physical joystick, were flying a physical plane, pulling the joystick essentially backwards or closer to you would actually raise the nose, and pulling it away from you forwards would lower it. So that's why. So we need to set the throttle for the engines in order for them to produce any power. And we can either do that by pressing the home and end keys on their own to change the throttle by 1 degree, or we can press shift home or shift end to change the throttle by 10% of the maximum available 100%, or we can press control home or control end to quickly change the so-called throttle presets as they were described in the last tutorial in part 7 in the plane properties. So with control home and control end, we can quickly change from, say, throttle preset 2 to throttle preset 3. Or we can also press alt home and alt end to quickly set the engines to full power or to idle. But essentially, it's never safe to set them to idle while flying and not trying to land at the moment. Because if we did that, we would lose any and all lift, and we would enter a stall again. We need to always be flying at least 1% of the possible power in order to stay airborne. We only set the engines to idle when actually trying to land, but I'll be talking about that in more detail in the later parts again. With the delete key, we can always check out the current status of our engines. If I press it now,
0, power, 0%, throttle preset 0.
It's at 0, power 0%, throttle preset 0. The important number is the first one. That is the actual throttle, the actual position or the actual percentage that we have the throttle lever set to. Obviously it can be between 0 and 100%, but on larger planes that are capable of maximum cruising speeds of over 500 kilometers per hour, there is actually another engine mode. So for these large planes, we can switch the engine's operation between flying mode and taxi mode. with Shift Delete. In taxi mode, we are essentially still moving or changing the position of the throttle lever between a 0 and 100. But that whole throttle lever only works with up to 10% and most of the engine's maximum possible power in taxi mode. So even if we set the throttle to 100 in taxi mode, the engines would only be running at 10% of their maximum possible power. If we set the throttle to 50% in taxi mode, the engine would be only running at 5% of its maximum possible power. The taxi mode is there so that we can taxi at the airport safely and we don't reach too much of a speed too quickly, so that we wouldn't then be able to brake in time to turn to the runway or to stop at a stand, etc. So that's why these large planes have taxi mode, and we switch between flight mode and taxi mode with Shift Delete. Also, we can press Control Delete at any time to choke off the engines, which is going to stabilize or fix the current speed. So if we want to keep moving at the current speed that we have, we press Control Delete, and then anytime we press any other of the keys that change the throttle, that speed stabilization is of course no longer going to work. So to sum it up, it's the keys Home and End for the throttle. Shift Home and Shift End, change it by 10%, Control Home, Control End, change the throttle presets. Alt Home sets the engines to full power. Alt Down sets the engines to idle. Delete on its own reads the current engine status and power. Shift Delete switches between flight mode and taxi mode for the larger planes. And Control Delete chokes off the engines and stabilizes our current speed. Page up and page down, in combination with other keys, are used to start the actual engines of the plane. It's done like this because in this way you can control the engines and steer the plane with the right hand, whereas you can check all the various information and systems of the plane with your left hand. Up and down, control the nose. Shift down raises it by 10 degrees, shift up lowers it by 10 degrees. Left and right control the wheels or the wings, either by 1 degree when pressed on its own, or by 10 degrees when pressed together with Shift. T reads out the current nose angle, pressed twice quickly levels the plane. G reads out the current wheel or wing angle, and when pressed twice quickly levels the plane. R reads our current speed. S reads our current course. K and L read our current coordinates, but these will be explained in the part of the tutorial that talks about navigating the airports. So let's try it now. I'm going to disengage the parking brake with B, otherwise we wouldn't be able to move.
Parking brakes off.
And let's get started. Let me increase the throttle a little bit by pressing Home just a couple times.
0. 0.
This is a small plane, so I need to add more.
0,9. 12. Power. 12%. Throttle preset 1. 3. Choked off. 3.
So I choked off the speed at 3.
0. Power. 0,0%. Throttle preset 1.
And when I was at 12% of the power.
West.
I'm still moving west.
50 hangar.
I'm still in the hangar. As soon as I get out of the hangar, I'm going to try to turn to be facing due north.
523 hangar. 521 hangar.
I can speed up a little bit because this is...
4.
The hangar is quite long.
31. Main area.
I was just holding...
Throttle.
Okay, let me stop. I pressed Alt-End quickly to set the engines to idle.
Throttle.
And I keep holding the slash key on the... It's the dash key in other keyboard layouts, or slash in the English keyboard layout to brake quickly. Okay.
50 main area. 208 main area.
208 main area.
west.
I'm facing due west, so let me turn south so that I can... because I'm
208 main area.
already 200 meters from west to east into the main area. But the main area is 500 by 500 meters, and I need like 400 meters to take off. So
50 main area, west.
I could be taking off to the west while still facing west, and I would still have enough room. Yeah, I know, that's true, but I want to show you how to turn. So let me get to speed.
0,2.
To the speed
0,
of 3.
1, 2, 3. Choked
Control
off.
delete,
Throttle
choke
preset
off
on.
the engines, and I'm going to press shift left 2 times. This ding sound, ding, tells us that we are turning, that the wheels are not level, and the melodic sound, the D1, always plays when we've turned by 10 degrees. Our current
Minus 20.
angle of the wheels is minus 20, so you can see the speed at which we're turning.
201.
And our course is now
196.
196,
189.
189,
179.
179.
0.
Pressed G twice quickly to level the wheels. Let me just
174. 100.
turn the wheels
4,
by 4 degrees.
175. 176. 176.
I turned
177.
a bit too much to the left, so I'm now
178.
turning back
178.
right, but much
179.
slower. Back to the right, but
South.
much slower this
0.
time
0.
to get
South.
south. Okay, I pressed G quickly twice again to level the plane and stop turning and to be
South.
facing due south.
4 main area. 3 main area. Throttle.
But I wanted to turn east. Oh, I forgot. So, if I now
Safety zone. Throttle.
if I now turn the
Throttle
wheels by 50 degrees,
3, 4. Choked off. Throttle preset.
and
1.
you see how quickly we're turning.
70.
Because it's such a... I turned a bit left of east so that I can get back to the
Main
main
area.
area, which I now did. And now turn due
0.
east.
94. 93. 93. 92. 92. 91. 91. East. 0. East.
Good.
234 main
And-
area. 236 main area.
Not east, but west. Turning by 180 degrees now.
0. 262.
Cabin lights on. Cabin lights off.
268. 200. 0. 273. 272. 272. 271. West. 0. 269. 206. 200. 200. 206. 200. 200. West. 0. West.
You see that since the Cessna C-152 is really such a small plane, it really turns very quickly and reacts quickly when you steer the wheel or turn the wheels by the whole 50 degrees.
174 main area.
174 main area.
167 main area.
When I get to 100,
West.
I'll turn 90 degrees to the right to be facing due north again,
145 main area.
and we'll be in a perfect
12 main area.
position to take off. Yeah.
12 main area.
12 main area from south to north.
125 main area.
125 main area from west to east, from left to right.
111 main area.
So getting to 111 and turning due north would be perfect for takeoff.
99 main area. 0. 0. 3. 2. 2. 2. 1. 1. 1. North. 0. North. Throttle.
Alt-End to set the engines to idle, and I held down slash or dash, depending on your keyboard layout, until we've stopped entirely.
34 main area. 89 main area.
Okay,
North.
and we're facing due north. Okay, I know that for this Cessna, the minimum required flap position for takeoff is 1, and the current takeoff speed should be around 110 kilometers per hour.
Cessna C. Certified condition. Number. Length. Cessna. Cruising. Maximum flap positions. Cruising. Base weight. Base landing. Stall speed. Base takeoff speed. 110 kilometers.
1 and 10, yeah.
Base stall speed. Current takeoff speed. 110 kilometers. Nose angle when taking off. Minimum flap position when taking off. 1.
1.
Dashboard.
So I'm going to press Control F
Set flap position.
to set the flaps. I'll press 1 and press
1.
Enter.
Dashboard window.
So it'll set the flaps to
Flaps
the
set.
position 1 required for takeoff. Now I'm going to press Alt Home to set the engines to full power. I'll let the plane keep gathering speed, and when it does, when the speed reaches 110 kilometers per hour, I'm going to press Shift down twice to quickly raise the nose by 20 degrees and start climbing. So Alt Home.
Throttle preset 4.
You can hear the sound of the engines getting higher pitched.
23 flaps at 1. 38 flaps at 1.
Moving at 38 kilometers per hour with the flaps set to position 1.
63 flaps at 1.
If I press delete,
90. Power. 90%.
Our power-
Throttle preset 4.
and our throttle
90 flaps at 1.
is 90%.
98 flaps at 1. 107 flaps at 1.
Shift down twice. We can hear the runway beneath us sound.
zone.
We were just flying over the main area, and this dinging sound again, this metallic sound,
of airport.
tells us we are not level. Okay, we just left the premises of the airport because we flew beyond the safety zone. Still taking off, still gathering speed and altitude.
155 flaps at 1.
Takeoff successful.
Let me actually choke off the speed with Control Delete now.
Choked off. Throttle
I don't
preset
want
2.
to start flying too fast. And let me also retract the flaps again. Control F,
Set
0,
0.
Enter.
Dashboard window.
Because if we forgot to retract the flaps,
Flaps
and kept
set.
them extended for too long while flying at such high speeds, they could actually get damaged. They can't stay raised too long for too long at high speeds. They're designed to help the plane stay airborne and not lose lift, but they're not designed for extended flights, for prolonged flights while they're extended. Sorry. So that's why we can't forget to retract them again once we've taken off and before we're about to land, because if we do, we could lose the flaps and we may not be able to land. Now, if I press Z on the
1,285. 1,300.
because I forgot to level the nose by pressing T twice. So if I press the Y key on the keyboard,
1,355.
this reads out our current altitude in the English keyboard layout. If I press N,
No destination.
I forgot to set my destination. So Control F8 for the list of all the available airports, starting with the one that's the closest to us.
Combo box Slovakia Surani. Elsa.
Space.
Destination set. Dashboard
Add
window.
it to my navigation, and now if I press N,
Behind at 180.
it's behind at 180 degrees. If I press Control N,
6,6 km Surani 2 minutes.
it's 6 kilometers away from us. So let me turn 180 degrees to the south. Press Shift right twice. Wait for us to turn 90, 110, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. Press G twice.
0. 1 left at 183.
One left at 183. So let's
0.
do that.
Dead ahead at 183.
Okay, dead ahead at 183. Control N.
6,6 km Surani 2 minutes.
6.6 kilometers. It'll take us 2 minutes to get there at our current speed. Let me also talk about the altitude for a bit. You can always, besides pressing Y for the
1,355.
current altitude, you can also press the comma key,
10 kilometers, safe altitude 177 m, which is 53 m above ground.
and it tells us that we are now less than 10 kilometers away from the airport, and that the safe altitude where we can be flying in any direction and not crash into a...
4,8 km.
Let me slow down again. Not crash into any mountain or hillsides is
5 kilometers, safe altitude 132 m, which is 8.
132 meters, which
5
is
kilometers, safe altitude 132 m, which is 8 m above ground.
8 meters above ground.
137. 135.
If we press the period key,
1,234 above
this
ground.
actually tells us how high above ground we are at the moment.
120.
Because if we don't feel like calculating
114. 113.
the altitude by ourselves,
Choked up 109.
I choked off the speed at 109, then this always tells us the actual height above ground. Because the Y key
926.
tells us our altitude as the height above sea level. The semicolon
120.
says the height above sea level of the terrain that we are currently flying over. The Y key
511.
says our current altitude, and the period key says our altitude above ground,
153 above ground.
and the comma key
5 kilometers, safe altitude 132 m, which is 8 m above.
says the safe altitude circle, the current safe altitude circle for the airport that we're currently flying over. That's currently the closest one to us. You will see that as you get farther and farther away from the airport, that safe altitude circle will get higher. You will have to be flying at a higher altitude farther away from the airport in order to avoid crashing into any terrain ahead of you. Likewise, you will be able to descend lower the closer to the airport you are.
1,3 km, Surrey 0 minutes.
Let me extend the flaps again, Control F,
Set flap.
but this time to the position
3. Dashboard window.
which will help us be able to land and then brake
Flaps
safely.
set.
And let's also check our
75 above ground.
current
0,5 km, Surrey 0.
altitude above ground. Let me
66 above,
keep
63
checking
above,
the
60 above, 56,
altitude
54,
periodically
52,
and
50
stop
above,
20
48,
meters
45,
above ground.
42, 40 above, 38 above, 36, 32 above,
Because
30
we
above,
can't
24 above,
land
20, 0, 20
Airport.
above ground, 20 above ground, 19 above ground, max 0,
More than
0.
20 above ground. Now, once the
Main
main
area.
area beacon right now
Throttle preset
starts
0.
playing, that we're flying
Landing successful.
below the landing area, we pressed Alt-End, to set the engines to idle, to stop producing lift, flight complete, and essentially let the plane fall down that way. Then as soon as we touched it down, we started holding the training
Eurofly 3 Lucas Hospital window.
dash or the slash key, depending on the keyboard layout, and kept holding it down to brake all the way to full stop. Remember though that you can only land successfully, you can only let the plane fall down like this by setting the engines to idle only when you're actually preparing for landing. That means you're 20 meters above ground or less, you are flying above the runway, which that beacon indicated, you have your flaps set to the corresponding position required for landing, and in case of category 2 and 3 planes, you also have your landing gear lowered, which the Cessna and the category 1 planes in general don't have a retractable landing gear, so that's why it's not even listed in the plane properties for these planes, and it is just always lowered. It's always ready to land, basically. So it's only if you meet all these conditions that you're able to land successfully by just setting the engines to idle, to 0 power, and let the plane touch down, or fall down if you will, all the way to the ground. Alright, so that's been it for today. That's been part 8, controlling the plane. Thanks for listening, for your attention, for keeping up with these tutorials, and for trying to remember everything. Stay tuned for the upcoming tutorials, and especially for the second series of tutorials that will be talking specifically about how to do the training flights with the 9 predetermined mandatory planes meant for training, where we'll be explaining all the differences between the various types of planes and airports in greater detail. This one was just to show you the steering, how it works in principle. So thanks for watching or listening, and see you next time.